This video is sponsored by Squarespace. For quite a while, I've been getting comments from all of you telling me to watch Witch Hat Atelier. I need to see Witch Hat Atelier. With everything I've ever discussed about magic in the past on my channel, I have to see this show. So, you got me. I became curious. Witch Hat Atelier is an anime based on a manga where a girl named Coco becomes a witch, and one part fun, vibrant adventure of young girls finding their place in the magic world, and another part eerily dark beneath the surface. I'm only going to give very light spoilers this video to do with the world building, because this show has the best magic system I can remember seeing in anything in a long time, possibly anything ever. The more I think about this, the more amazing I realise it is, and there's so much to learn from just breaking it down. Are you ready to learn? Yes? Well then, check out this cool train. So it's worth firstly just explaining how magic works as a basic concept in this story. This is a very light spoiler for episode 1, when you get to find this out midway through the episode, basically that magic is drawn. You require special ink and pens, but provided you have that, it is as simple as knowing what to draw and being able to draw it effectively. Technically. You draw these really cool seals where the outer circle is what contains the magic, and then there are different sigils depending on what elements the spell should contain, and then as how big you draw the seal affects its power, or how big or small the elements inside it are affect how potent they are in the mixture, where they're positioned in contrast to each other, how they're balanced, and obviously how smoothly you can draw the symbols and the outer circle itself, which until the circle is complete, the spell inside it doesn't activate. So you draw an almost perfect circle but leave a tiny gap, and then when you finish drawing everything inside, you complete the circle or close the circle. Obviously there is more to that, and I imagine someone versed in the manga can describe a lot more than I can, but this is the basic premise, and immediately you can see the first strength to this system is how unique it is, as opposed to waving a wand or a staff or moving your hands in some kind of dramatic gesture. Magic is a case of calligraphy really here. It looks really cool, it's smooth as hell, it feels very original. But that's not really useful for me to say, you know, a magic system is good when it feels unique, obviously. So I'm going to make my first strength this instead. A great magic system has a concept that's easy to understand from the beginning. Magic is drawn. Very, very clear what this means. Visually, you see someone drawing with a circle and some symbols and you get it immediately. There's obviously all of the complex aspects we can layer on top, but the core concept itself is incredibly simple. And for most successful magic systems, this is often the case. In Avatar, you use martial arts to force or shape one of the 4 elements. In Full Metal Alchemist, there is the law of equivalent exchange. Even in some of the softest magic systems, the concept itself tends to have one clear point, such as the Force in Star Wars. That one is quite vague, obviously, but it's still very simple to grasp. But then you layer all the complexity on top of that very simple idea. You let it branch outwards from that. All of the complications feel a lot less complicated because you've first been allowed to understand the basic premise. So this would be the second strength on my list. A good magic system feeds its complexity in over time. Well, no, not even that exactly, because I don't mean spread the exposition out. I mean the simple initial concepts just naturally branches outwards as you slowly begin to understand everything that can be done with it. Because the show takes this core idea and even in just a few episodes runs with it super far. Like, if you have to draw all the magic, the obvious question is how can it be used in a hurry? How can you inject it into action sequences? And of course, seals are mostly drawn in advance, or onto pre-prepared objects, like a levitation spell on the bottom of these shoes. The drawing is in 2 halves on each sole, so only activated when the wearer pushes their shoes together. That's really cool. And we just learn that kind of thing naturally when we see the characters need to use shoes like this. Or when we come across old Yu-Gi-Oh! He has 2 rings that when put together create a drying spell. Also, my favourite thing, he has these glowing paving slabs he invented when he was younger. Underneath the slab, most of the seal is drawn on this like block of stone, and then the rest is on the ceiling of the slab above, but only when pressure is applied do the two stones together properly touch, meaning the circle doesn't complete till then, meaning the floor doesn't glow until someone steps on it. That's so cool. It gets you looking at the character who invented them like, damn, this is one creative guy. This is the key point, really, because a magic system having complexity on its own is not enough. Sometimes that's even a weakness on its own, because it just adds unnecessary confusion. But the third strength here, actually, is that a good magic system allows your characters to be creative and innovative in how they use it. A magic system here allows people in this world to be inventing with it, to be coming up with new ways to adapt magic, and that's what makes a world feel alive, when it can change and progress and innovate. And this show is just dripping with creative ingenuity like that, to the point you almost start puzzling out ideas for yourself. How could something be made? How would you draw that? I feel like this concept is just perfectly designed to be a video game, like a really calm one where you're drawing spells for people. Kind of like the game Potion Craft, but instead of making potions, you're making seals. This is a magic system the audience feels compelled to play about with themselves, and that just makes it feel so real and immersive. In one episode, they're trying to adapt this cloud spell Tetia came up with so that the cloud is now durable enough for a dragon to stand on it without falling through. We get the cool, very childlike concept for the episode where they're going to fight this dragon by giving it a fluffy cloud bed for it to fall asleep on, which is just great when your characters are kids. And you get to see them logically puzzling out the answer for how to do that. How can we make this cloud durable enough to withstand a dragon's weight? They're like engineers studying cause and effect, finding solutions, and doing so in a way that we as the audience can logically follow along with, can understand it. That kind of thing is so satisfying when they figure out the answer. It's like watching a TV detective figure out who the murderer is. It's that same kind of satisfaction, but just from them figuring out how to make a spell. To use the example of Avatar again, that magic system is at its most vibrant when we see Iroh doing things like studying waterbending techniques and adapting them in order to channel lightning, in order to figure out something new in the world, something that nobody's done before, that makes the story feel like what you're following is really progressing events in this world. And we get that here all the time, even in very, very minor forms, like Coco trying to come up with a spell to pluck pears and it's not quite working, so Tetia suggests curving the pull in the arrows slightly so that the fruit can be twisted as it's being pulled. This sort of twist effect. I am in love with this level of creative thinking.
When you fail, try to determine the reason for your failure. And when you succeed, ask why it worked.
And I think this brings us to our fourth strength, which is this.
There are many kinds of magic, but some are of particular importance. The sigil of water, the sigil of earth, the sigil of levitation, and finally,
the sigil of Squarespace. Yeah, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Anyone building and growing their own website or online business, this is the all-in-one platform you need. Designing a website, linking with business email, integrations, securing your domain, built-in SEO tools, personalized marketing campaigns, email campaigns, analytics, invoices, booking schedules, contact forms, donations, and everything else. It's all here. I've been building my own website on Squarespace to promote my editing services, but also I've been making a shop page to sell my poetry book. This footage is all me building it from scratch without the need of any tutorials. I'd find it all so intuitive, add elements, drag and resize everything smoothly on this grid system I really like, change the colours, add pictures, build a nice contact form, and then publish. Yeah, this website is live now. Thanks to Squarespace, I was able to build the exact site I wanted and sell my book without any of the expected hassle. So, if you want the best domain name at an all-inclusive price, if you want integrated SEO tools, if you want a giant scrolling list of all the things Squarespace offered, then click the link in the description or the pinned comment for a free trial to Squarespace. And if it suits you nicely, then use the code MyLittleThoughtTree to get 10% off purchasing your first domain or website, just like I did. Squarespace. No. Sorry, the fourth strength isn't that. It's that the audience can grasp what makes a person good at magic and how they can get better. Here, we can easily understand a witch has to memorize certain spells and how to draw them. They also have to perfect drawing them well, and they also have to understand the intricacies of drawing in general well enough to adapt certain spells for certain situations or figure out new ideas. Knowledge, dexterity, and creativity. The greater a sense we have of what what's required to improve, the more space there is not just for character development using magic, but the easier it becomes to weave magic into your scenes, because now there's a clear sense of something the characters can be doing in the quiet moments of the story, something they can be working at. We see tons and tons of scenes where Coco or the others are just practicing their drawing, and I adore that. Not only because this is so rare to see in stories, people actually having to train a lot to improve beyond like 1 or 2 training montages, seeing that the work can be tedious and difficult and rigorous, but also because this is the backbone of the story so far. A bunch of young girls getting to figure out magic together. This is the focus of their lives. Thematically, there's a lot in this for kids and young adults who have to study rigorously in their own lives for grades or for the hope of a better future. That's a very relatable situation, and through the fantasy of magic, this story is able to explore what that's like for kids and to craft a story out of it. Which is the 5th strength. Learning about the magic system is intertwined with learning about our characters. Agot is extremely determined to practice and learn as much as she can, to the point she can seem almost cruel to herself. Getting lots of shots where we just see her sitting fixedly still drawing circles over and over and over is a visual that expresses a ton about her character and opens up a lot of space to learn more about her as a person, whilst at the same time showing us what's required to improve and often how spells do function. Best of all, the more developed a magic system is, the easier it becomes to use as a metaphor for moments of character growth. That would be the 6th strength. A good magic system provides substance to fuel character growth, such as the example of how magic can help with cooking being a lesson for Coco that practice becomes less stressful if you can find a natural way to work it into your routine. That's a really nice moment for her as a character, told through the example of how you use magic to help with cooking. And we barely scratched the surface on this kind of point. I sort of already discussed the 7th strength here. A good magic system provides space for deeper thematic exploration. So, for example, there's the fact that anyone who isn't already a witch doesn't know how magic works in this world. It is kept secret. Coco has no idea until she happens to spy on somebody drawing, which is, by the way, the 8th strength, when just explaining the magic system itself is an important story beat. You know, we're not just being told how the magic works through exposition, we're seeing our main character discover it in real time, having made a decision. She'd been in a bit of a character dilemma between 2 choices that then affects her character going ahead, starting with her learning how magic works. This is exposition tied inexorably to the character conflict and to plot twist, making it super impactful. But yeah, thematically it's not this mystical, unobtainable art, but something witches sort of have a monopoly on, and that's a fascinating idea, because now you get to sink your teeth into the question of why do they have the right to keep magic secret? Why must they keep it secret? What are all the complex and troubling implications this draws up for the world? There's so much for the audience then to think about here, and for the characters to play around with and have different perspectives on. You know, all the stuff Harry Potter did have the foundation to explore, but point blank refused to do anything with whatsoever regarding its own statute of secrecy. But in Witch Hat Atelier, this concept in the magic system allows us to explore politics and inequality and the rigid justice system and the Knights Moralis and chaos and probably a billion other things that will appear in later episodes. For which, we also have to mention the concept of forbidden magic, this being the root of the plots and the antagonist in the story so far, but also increasingly complex to think about. All sorts of magic was forbidden, and those who practiced it were either shunned from society or had their memories erased in order that their skills and their techniques of magic were lost to time, because the argument was too much of magic is too dangerous. When people are capable of doing anything will often happen with catastrophic consequences. But then, how right is it to erase people's memories? And how do we know all of this forbidden magic was actually bad? Can you determine that so easily? How do we know forbidding all of this stuff wasn't a policy about one group consolidating their power by infringing on another's, rather than a real attempt to truly protect people? The story is yet to truly explore these points, but we are deliberately encouraged to wonder about them. It is very organically opening space for these kind of questions, because the magic system is so well crafted. Just by the virtue of seeing the world, these themes very organically arise, and that's great. It's really, really great. Same with all of the general darkness in the story that keeps hinting to forbidden magic. I really enjoy this shot where Coco is contemplating drawing a seal on her skin to get herself to levitate, but then changes her mind because it's forbidden. I don't know why it's forbidden, but there's clearly something very, very ominous here. In short, this is an astoundingly well-crafted and well-written magic system that enabled the story to almost write itself in a lot of ways. It's all amazing, and there are probably even more strengths I haven't listed that you can do so in the comments. At the time of recording this, the first 9 episodes were out, but we're about to have a baby, so who knows when I can get round to editing and releasing this video. I'm just saying that in case it feels like I've missed something that happens in later episodes. I'm very excited to watch the end. Witch Hat Atelier, if I'm honest, I don't think is a flawless show. There are still lots of moments where exposition can be really clunky. I think for a first season, we're not yet exploring enough characters' depth, as our cast rarely stretch beyond the level of typical archetypes. Sometimes the show lacks a hell of a lot of subtlety in how it explores character arc, and whilst this isn't a fair criticism about the show itself, I have been watching the English dub and I think the quality of voice acting can vary from brilliant to unconvincing to really bad Irish accents. I'm sorry, no Noah, every other word you're slipping from Irish to Scottish to vaguely Yorkshire, and I get the concept of the tone flipping back and forth between incredibly sweet childlike humour and very dark underlying implications. I like that in concept, but sometimes in execution I find the contrast a little too jarring. Or maybe that's just my personal preference. I'm not really a fan of anime getting too anime in its over-the-top reactions. Not my thing. With all of that said, the animation is often genuinely breathtaking here, and the magic system is so well designed and expressed that I find it hard not to explode with enthusiasm about it. Thank you to all of me who kept insisting I watch this show. And I don't know, if this video is out before the show has finished, let me know if you would like another video about the full season or about the show in general or something. Otherwise, comment your thoughts, good or bad. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe, maybe support me on Patreon, either as a paid member to get access to bonus content, your name in the credits, or joining the Discord server. However, you can also just join the Patreon page as a free member. Pay absolutely nothing, just be there. I share all my new videos on Patreon precisely because it will notify you better than YouTube itself does that I've released videos. So if you just want to keep up with my content, consider joining even for a free membership. But otherwise, yeah, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Luke Gore, Michael Gallagher, Emery, Faithy, TQM, Kinesthetic, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.